Moss Media.
Welcome to the Independent Voter Podcast from Independent Voter Project. We're going to expand a little bit. A new era of independent voter news that the journalists just don't cover. It's where we have these debates on a national level, really taking on issues so that people have more educated disagreements with each other. Just explain how the process really works. Welcome back to this episode of Independent Voter Podcast, joined again by Cara McCormick. We got some, few exciting things to talk about this week. We've had some stories go pretty viral on Independent Voter Project, Independent Voter News, I should say. One of them being Cara's article talking about how the progressive left worried about Trump taking their cannabis issue, right? It went viral in two ways on the website. I mean, you got hundreds of thousands of people have read the article. And then also on social media, I think the last I saw, there's 1.5 million folks that were engaging with the cartoonized version of your article. So, Cara, give us a little bit about, why do you think this article has gone so nuts?
I mean, I don't really know, but it is really interesting to see that. So basically, President Trump is considering reclassifying cannabis from Schedule 1, which is has it scheduled alongside of heroin and LSD, and moving it to Schedule 3 or Schedule 2 or Schedule 3. We're not sure, but ever since 1970, cannabis has been a Schedule 1 drug under Nixon, and there's been 4 presidents from the Democratic Party that have considered rescheduling it, but none of them ever had the political will to do that. But it looks like President Trump might. Yeah. And this has made the Democrats and particularly like the progressive left really nervous that Trump will take away this issue that they sort of have always counted on.
Yeah,
right?
but I love how it this alerted to us because I think somebody forwarded us an email from the Progressive Turnout Project, Hair on Fire, oh my gosh. And I think this just highlights, I don't know, at least for me, a lot of folks in this, independent space is instead of saying, oh, this is great, we might get something passed that, quote unquote, our side didn't do for so long. It's, oh no, they might do something that we wanted our people to do and we need to stop. It's just a testament of the times of politics. The interest isn't in accomplishing the issue that they're passionate about. It's not letting somebody they don't like take credit for doing something, right? So
So Chad, I'll never forget the first time that I was working on a campaign. It was way back in 1996. But the first time that I had the realization that I was happy that the Senate, that a bunch of Republican senators had voted against something that I supported. And I was glad that they had voted against it because then I knew we'd be able to use it in the campaign against them, right? Even though it's something that I wanted to see
So you're
pass.
The problem, Cara.
Totally. 100%.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And then I also remember, maybe 20 years into my career, realizing that, and this was really funny to just realize so late, but when you have the abortion rights, the NARAL, I don't think they're called NARAL anymore, but they're the abortion rights group, and the League of Conservation Voters, and sort of these interest groups that are Democratic Party interest groups, how they often don't even support the people in the primary that agree with them on their issue because they have a partisan agenda that almost overrides their environmental agenda or their pro-choice agenda.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's almost the same thing. They would rather have somebody in the legislature that's going to do some crazy, as far as you can, anti-abortion thing, right? No abortions ever for any, right? They actually, in some ways, want those people to be elected because then they can do fundraising as we don't, right? They can do fundraising against it. They can point out this is why we need to exist because there's people that are going to take it too far, right? And so it's just one of the complexities of politics. And I think we've gotten to a point of absurdity where are there any incentives for to come back and say, no, let's actually prioritize fixing things and getting things that don't set our hair on fire.
This is it, right? This is it. So there's issues and ideas where there is broad support among the people. So like cannabis, for example, it's something like an 80% issue. 80 something percent of Americans think it should be reclassified, right? They're for it. They want it legalized. It's not really a question. Like there's broad agreement about cannabis in this country, but the parties like use the issue to divide us, and the debate gets set as an either or, as a yes or a no, but the people agree, and you can go issue after issue after issue.
I mean, here's one that we hadn't written about it. Maybe we should. We had an article that did really exploded months ago, but on an issue that touched close to home, like, Cara, my wife's from Brazil. She got her citizenship actually had her first year citizen anniversary a few weeks ago. But, she went through the process and did all that stuff. And she had a friend the other day who went to, overstayed the visa, but going through the process showed up for a green card. Now, I don't know all the details. I haven't submitted a FOIA request and everything, but at least the narrative I know is like they're detaining him at the point of showing up to a green card hearing, right? Where it's like, yes, Trump won on the issue of immigration. There's a perfect example. It's because 80% knew that they didn't want just this open border and a flood of people coming in who are unvetted. But at the same time, like 80% of the people are like, okay, you're kind of taking it too far. We're not against people coming. We're for having a process. And we support people who will go through a process, right? And sign up to be known who they are. And not like what we're against is not knowing who you are, not registering, not being a part of the system, right? And of course, we're all against the criminals, the people who come and commit crimes, right? So it's just a perfect example. Is like, why is it take an all or nothing on either side? We either need to eliminate borders and let everybody from the world come and settle here and give them all the benefits of citizenship, or kick everybody out, right? Why is it always such an either or?
Because of the system, because of the two-party system that is basically cemented into place by first past the post voting. I mean, that's what I think. If you had the ability to choose someone else besides a Democrat or a Republican, and they actually had a fair chance, then we'd see a lot more people who weren't Democrats and Republicans, able to come to power. And, there would be a fulcrum sort of in the middle, like there would just be a common sense coalition.
Yeah, but this kind of came up in our editorial meeting. We were talking about open and nonpartisan primaries, right? Is like there's this wonky stuff. Now we're getting to the wonky things where people are either dropping off or they're
gonna get
are like
so
us
bored.
and don't have, right? But but it is important, right? Like the way we elect folks. If you have a closed primary, the incentives are to talk to a partisan base, small, narrow set of voters who turn out and vote on single issues in a partisan primary, right? If you have
and candidates, right, who tailor their messages in a closed primary towards a closed primary electorate, towards the most partisan people, right? So they're tailoring their message in order to win a primary, and then you'll see many, many, many people then change their message once they make it through the primary to try to have a general election message.
Right.
So they're having one message for the primary election and a different message that will appeal more broadly, they hope, to the general electorate. But if you change the way that we vote, and if you have nonpartisan primaries that are open to anybody to run, and you're able to have a certain amount advance, then you have candidates who are trying to appeal to the broadest number of voters at all stages of the election, which means that ideas that work for most of the voters are going to get support.
Yeah.
in that context.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not obviously it's directly connected to gerrymandering. You talk about another thing that's gone crazy. And one of the things I love on IVN is like we usually a lot of this divisiveness or stuff on social media derives from a sense of a negativity, right? Like, oh my God, they said that, or oh, they're demeaning somebody, right? We actually had a reel like getting hundreds of thousands of engagements. It was a Californian Republican, Kevin Kiley, introducing a gerrymandering bill to basically call off the dogs on both parties to have a national law against, gerrymandering in the mid-decade gerrymandering, right? And the positive response to that from people saying, I'm a Democrat, but he's exactly right, and all this stuff. It's like, there's an 80-20 issue, probably 95-5 issue where people just, they don't want the gerrymandering. They don't want this, yet they vote for it within the context of like a California Prop 50 because I don't know. Why are people so passionately for like independent redistricting, yet you put something on the ballot and the voters vote for, and the political story says, unrightfully, but people actually want gerrymandering. They want partisan gerrymandering.
Oh, that story that was in Politico about the poll where they said that we talked about that last week on the pod, where they did this poll that said that people actually want gerrymandering.
Right. Which is so dishonest, but then, anyways, we just got into this point of hopefully the partisan absurdity and like you making those statements gotten so absurd that we're on a moment to swing back, and folks like Kevin Kiley, who maybe he's only introducing this because he's going to get squeezed out because of the redistricting in California. But I have a feeling that those kinds of voices, there's people who want to hear more of those voices right now. The difficulty is how do we get them into office in a structure that exists today.
Right, because otherwise they're just, it's literally, if you keep having first past the post voting, then you're going to keep having the choice between two candidates.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at this for as long as I'm alive, as long as my kids are alive, as long as their kids are alive. Like, this is just what we're going to be stuck with because the system itself has to get changed in order to change the incentives, in order to increase the competition, and basically in order to allow for the best ideas to come to win in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we live in a country where the best ideas are not the ones that are rising to the top when it comes to our politics. Maybe they're rising to the top in, when it comes to, AI or maybe not healthcare, but certain things that are like
marketplace there.
When there's a real marketplace, then the best idea does have the chance to win. But in this marketplace of politics, the best candidate doesn't have a chance not necessarily have a chance. It's just either the Republican candidate or the Democratic candidate. And if you're voting for the independent who happens to, to make it onto the ballot, then the whole time people are saying that person's going to spoil the election, or that a vote for that person is really a vote for the Republican, or a vote for that person is really a vote for the Democrat, like what you saw in New York City in the mayor's race recently there with a 3-person race with Cuomo and Mamdani and
right where the dynamics were set because of the way they conducted elections. Like, they would have never had those dynamics if you didn't have the elections like the way they did, right? They brought in ranked choice voting during the primary. Look, Cuomo would have won outright. Forget the who won, right? We always focus on, Mamdani won, therefore I like or dislike the system, right? No, like, just step back as an operative. Cuomo wins under the old system because it was a first past the post closed primary, right? So he's going to aggregate the most,
maybe Adams.
Maybe Adams. I don't know. It would have been a different outcome. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mamdani would have still won on it. But it fundamentally changed the dynamics, even to the point of campaigning, right? Because under the ranked choice, now Mamdani isn't trying to just talk to enough people to get to a 25%, which might be enough, right? He's now looking for second place votes, third place votes. It also gives voters a reason to look for somebody outside the person they support, because who's going to be my second choice? It fundamentally, I don't care what political scientists say that, okay, we measured these results and now it made it 5% more partisan. And you cannot possibly measure or calculate the fundamental change in to political messaging, politics, coalition building, everything that happens when you change the incentives of the process itself, right? And all you're saying is like most places, the incentives are divide and conquer, right?
Totally.
And that we're just saying it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Right,
So,
which is that's maybe why we do get some positive engagement on our website. And like when we're giving people not just here's the problem and here's how screwed up it is and here's what we're doomed to, keep repeating forever. If we give them some hope and we say, hey, we have found this, there's this answer, right? There's this answer that exists to help cure us of this ill. It's kind of like you can stop smoking, right? There's this way for you to
I did,
for us
Cara.
to get our democracy more healthy.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that does give people hope. That
Yeah.
does. And then now we just have to give them something to do in that context, because just telling them about like, oh, well, we could have ranked choice voting or we could have open primaries. You actually have to give them something to do in that regard.
Yeah, but the average person too isn't going to wake up, and they're not like us. They're not wonks that are going to come and think about, oh, how do we elect, right? They just want to go and I have this argument all the time because, I do consulting. I advise campaigns. I advise, in communications projects. And I don't know, man, we go out and run a poll. What do people think of this and think of that, right? I think why do we have these people that come out and totally just like prove the polls wrong, right? It's because something that's hard to measure in a poll that is totally undervalued. I honestly believe that a lot of people don't want to elect somebody that agrees with them on everything, right? Like they want to elect somebody they trust to make a decision that will be made out of goodwill and good faith, even if they don't necessarily agree with it, right? That's the point of having a representative, right? I don't have time to think of all the things and make the deals and, do all the things that I'm delegating my authority to you, representative, to make those decisions for me, because my job is taking care of the kids, folding the laundry, going to work, doing all those other things, right? And in this political world, we wake up and go, well, all these people, they want this. They want things to be, they want the tax rate to be 8.35%, right? It's like, no, like most people they're just saying, I want it to be right. And I want people doing it. And right now that we just lost the trust that the people that are there are negotiating out of good faith, which goes back to your point about the progressive turnout project, right? Like those are folks in politics admitting we're not focused on doing what's right or celebrating something that we agree with. Like we're pointing out that somebody else might be doing something that we like and we don't like that, because then they're going to get credit for, you get my point. It's like, it's not about doing what's right. It's about getting political credit. And I think people are tired of that.
For sure. There's just no doubt that people are tired of it. There's no doubt that our leaders are sort of losing the consent of the governed. That this division and this polarization that's caused by the first past the post system is, it's really, really hurting our country. And it just it changes the incentives, and we're not all rowing in the same direction anymore.
Right.
We need to start rowing in the same direction as one another, and sort of just understanding that we agree on so much more than we disagree on. We really, really do when it comes down to it. Like, there's no way that when you're talking about the situation with immigration that's happening right now, there's no way that people voted for this.
Right.
They
There's
definitely did not want an open border, like what you said. Absolutely 100%. We don't want an open border, but we also do not want, mothers being arrested at their green card hearings and taken away from their children, and sent to El Salvador or whatever it is. Like, it's insane.
Right. And then, hopefully the administration, has a defense in there. They got a plan, and hopefully this isn't, this isn't going to be the course of the rest of the world. But, one thing is the end of the year is coming up. I'm terrible at doing it, but if you'd like to give a contribution, go to Independent Voter Project, make a donation to the Independent Voter Project so we can continue to do these types of things and push reforms that realign the incentives. That would be great. I think, Cara, we're going to do a podcast talk going more in depth about what is open primaries, what is closed primaries, what is nonpartisan primaries, right?
We need to do that, because the other day, actually it was just yesterday on our editorial call, I said something like, I kind of conflated
I think you said, why don't you say like nonpartisan primaries instead of open primaries
why don't we call them nonpartisan primaries instead of open primaries?
Yeah.
Because that's just sort of sounds more fair to have a nonpartisan primary. I mean, open primary sounds good too.
It's just
but I was just thinking about it. And Chad, what did you just explain to the people what the difference is?
One's a square and one's a rectangle. The square is also a rectangle, right? They're just different things, right? And they're different descriptors, which we'll get into more on the next show.
But I think the larger point is, even for somebody who is as steeped in election reform as I am, I've been working on this for more than a decade, and so have you, Chad, but I'm always have to be a student of all the different iterations of election reform. Like, I'm not just going to be the teacher and say, here's what it is and here's the best thing. Like, I'm always learning and always evolving, and don't really even understand. There's so many nuances, right? And we have to just remember that, I guess.
Right. And in the interest of talking about our political divisions, we have what some people might think is a divisive figure. Others might think he's just a businessman. But Adam Swart runs a company that helps you get grassroots protesters out at events, right? Even what I said can be divisive. People go, well, by definition, if you're paying them, they're not grassroots, right? Well, we're going to bring on Adam Swart to talk about what he does for a living. And, you all can make up your own mind. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Does this exacerbate our divisions? And, if Adam Swart wasn't there, would somebody else be there to fill his place? Because that's the marketplace that we created. So, and welcome Adam Swart. And Cara, thank you again for another week of Independent Voter Podcast. We got a lot more to talk about next time.
Thanks, Chad. Great to see you.
All right. Like I said, we spend a lot of time talking about divisions and the incentive structure of politics, right? And how closed primaries create a more divisive structure and this and that, and then the wonky details. One of the things I love about Independent Voter Projects, we talk to everybody and just want to know, like, what's your perspective? So we're going to bring on a guy who some people love, some people hate, some people, probably don't wake up thinking about. But what he does is, he has a business that helps, bring out the folks that you want to have at your political rallies and your organization. Some people say that, it could be grassroots. Some say it's AstroTurf. Some say this is the cause of all of our problems in politics. Some say this is what we need, right, to level the playing field, right? I don't know. So we're bringing on Adam Swart. Why don't you say what you do, why you do it, how it relates to, the politics that we're seeing today?
Well, hey, Chad, thanks so much for having me on your program. And while maybe my presence brings mixed emotions, my emotion is joyful to be on this podcast because I love giving people more options to the tired old Republican and Democratic parties. Like, I'm a former Democrat, but I'm not a Republican. So I'm someone who really finds myself wanting people who don't espouse the party platform, who don't work for party bosses. So I think it's really exciting to be on a program where at least we have that in common. Certainly we can discuss the tactics and everything, but a little bit about me, founder and CEO of Crowds on Demand. We've been around it for 13 years. We're probably best known as the most well-known and largest protest company in the country. So
explain, what does that mean? I'm a protest company. What does that mean?
Organize protests from the ground up. We build movements from the ground up, and we create kind of advertising and publicity campaigns from the ground up.
So are you the one stopping our traffic? You got a bunch of people in the car and preventing us from getting to work?
So no, because that would be illegal. So I'm not allowed to do that, right?
Okay.
So what we are, that's one of the reasons I like to go on the media is to clarify that, because this is a common question I get asked. Oh, are you the ones throwing a Molotov cocktail? Are you guys the ones blocking the traffic? It's like, no, if I was the one doing that, I would be not here. I'd be in jail probably, right? So we are not engaged in any form of illegal activity. And moreover, I condemn all of those activities. And the reason why is we live in a free country where we have the freedom to actually protest and speak our minds. I was literally just this morning, as I was getting ready, listening to a documentary about Hong Kong and
Mhm.
struggle for democracy, and how a lot of people there have engaged in these more disruptive tactics. Why? Because they don't have the right to civic participation.
Right.
In the United States, we do, so we don't have to do those sorts of things.
Yeah. So, I mean, but this is an interesting question. I'm sure you get it all the time, right? And you're saying there's a fundamental difference of when you're going and exercising your First Amendment right to protest in this, and then when you're doing that because somebody's paying you to do it, right? So
Okay.
do the First Amendment rights still remain? Is it qualify as a protest if somebody's being paid to do it, right? So I mean, how do you answer those questions? I'm not saying, right? I'm just asking the questions.
Well, I guess what I would say is, Chad, when you go to court for your clients, does it matter whether you're on a pro bono basis or on a paid basis? You
You know,
still are allowed to
how do you
represent.
know I'm an attorney, right? Well,
Right.
I'm not going into court to protest, right? So it's
Well,
a
but I'm
little
saying is that
different.
what you're saying, the kind of implication is that there is receiving compensation. If I kind of take it to the next level, receiving compensation creates an ulterior motive, and an ulterior motive impugns the legitimacy of the protest, right? Is that sort of the
Well, I'm saying that I think that's a legitimate critique. I mean, certainly let's put a hyperbole, right? If you said, "Hey, I'll give you $1 million to go out in
sure?
downtown San Diego, and I want you to hold a sign that says everyone needs to wear pink pants," right?
Probably, honestly, if
And
you
I'm
give me
sure
$1 million, I'd probably wear something. I probably
that right. That's my
have
point.
like
That's a
a more outrageous
hyperbolized
sign.
analogy, right? But
Sure,
that's okay. Those
yeah,
people don't really believe in pink pants. They're
yeah,
not pink pant people. They want $1 million. Okay,
yeah,
so
of course. So
where
that's
does the line come when
yeah,
this is like a legitimate? It's a protest because it's an important issue,
yeah.
or it's a protest because somebody with a big checkbook can call Adam and say, "Hey, Adam, wouldn't this be awesome if I gave
Look,
you $1
look,
million and then we just had a bunch of people asking for pink pants tomorrow?"
so sure, let's unpack that,
Yeah.
right? So essentially, we're not paying people $1 million. What we First of all, I like to say that we pay people enough to compensate them for their time, for the opportunity costs of going out, but not enough for them to change their opinion. So if we pay people 100, 200, $300 to go out to something, right? If you're a MAGA person, you're not going to go to a BLM rally for $150, right? And chant about institutional racism, which you don't believe in. And conversely, if you're a BLM supporter, you're not going to go chant MAGA, build the wall for $150. And what's kind of interesting is, like, a lot of the criticism that I've gotten on this business is from very highly paid commentators in the media who are making 7, 8 figures, and they want you to believe that, oh, well, when Joe Rogan gets 8 or 9 figures, right? Those are his real views. But somehow when my people are getting 3 figures, that somehow that is them being kind of paid to espouse a view that they don't believe in, right? So I think that kind of rings a little hollow. The other thing I would say is, so we vet all of our people to make sure that they're actually in line with the cause. So, and it actually costs me money to do that, because I actually have a team of people before every event that interview every participant and says, hey, look, what is your belief? We're looking to do this event. It's an environmentalist rally, right? Are you an environmentalist, right? So we'll actually vet people. It's kind of a reverse jury questionnaire. Jury questionnaire wants to make sure you're impartial. We want to make sure you're partial, right? So we do this, and actually, it's been a priority of mine to make sure we do this over the past several years. And that's actually cost us money because I've not been able to pass all of those additional costs on to our clients. So we actually are absorbing some of the costs of doing that because I think it makes our events more effective and more genuine. So this idea that you're getting paid creates something that's kind of not genuine isn't really true. The other thing that's important is that there are a lot of other ulterior motives, right? So the kind of thesis of your sort of statement was, well, the idea that somebody might get paid is sort of an ulterior motive. Well, what about a labor union? That I know a lot of friends in labor unions who are told, hey, you go out for this rally or that rally. If you go, you're going to get a better shift. And if you don't go, and if you never go to the union events, you're going to find yourself sidelined, right? So do labor unions, should they, does the fact that a labor union might be turning out its guys there delegitimize the rally, right? Similarly, now we are in an era of social media, right? So all these people do go to rallies to flex on Instagram, and like the BLM rally is a great example of it. Like I know so many people who are not political who went out there, the Real Housewives of Orange County went out there as if they knew about institutional racism, right? Like they were out there protesting for BLM, but they posted it on Instagram and got media coverage to show they're with the zeitgeist. So my point is, I guess what I'm saying is,
you're just saying everything's bullshit. I might as well be bullshit too, right?
Pardon, say that again.
You're just saying everything's bullshit. Might as well be bullshit.
Well,
too,
I think
right?
a bit. See, I would see a little bit different. I would say there's a lot of ulterior motives, right? So instead of trying to unpack everyone's ulterior motivation, right? We're better off saying, what is this protest? Do I agree with it? Do I disagree with it? Are they making valid points? Are they not making valid points? I think I'm smart enough, and Chad, you, I think, are smart enough to say, here's this protest for something I don't like. Well, I don't care if there's 10 people or 5,000 people out at that protest. If I don't like it, I don't like it, and I'm not going to support it. I'm not a sheep. I'm a person.
Yeah, well, I think you make some pretty compelling arguments, like you say, but I think there are the folks on the side that are going to go and look and say, well, there's something fundamentally different about a protest. It's a demonstration of people who are so fed up, right? They're willing to walk away from their job for a bit or not do this and like solely do that, right? And that once you even compensate them for your time, it's not really a protest. It's just a gathering of, a paid gathering. I don't know. So like I say, I'm not saying there is a right answer. The right answer is probably not one side or the other, right? I respect what you're doing, saying, look, there's a market for it. You're going out, you're doing it. And then, I respect it in that you're following the law and you're not the ones throwing Molotov cocktails and everything. Obviously, I think most people would be happy to hear that. But a question for you is, one, do you only do this in the political space? It seems like there'd be more money to make, like, organizing a gathering for like McDonald's to everybody chant, like,
and we do, by the way.
Subway, the $5 foot long. You got like 1 million people walking down the street with a baguette saying, "We want $5 foot longs." Like that could probably be a real good marketing campaign. Subway, if you do that, I trademarked.
Yeah, I actually like that idea. I wouldn't work with McDonald's because I think they're evil, but yes, generally, yes, we would.
Well, that's why I moved on to Subway, the franchise model to help out the local franchisee, but right, and then the baguette, right, is going to call more attention than chicken nuggets, right? So if you got a foot long baguette demanding $5 footlongs come back, right, down the street, I bet you could gear up some interest in $5 footlongs.
I love that idea. And yes, so the answer to your question, Chad, is that yes, a lot of our business is doing PR stunts kind of along the lines of what you described for businesses. That tends not to get as much publicity because it tends not to inspire as much strong sentiment, because almost everybody is like, oh yeah, PR stunt is fine. So yeah, we do a lot of that for private businesses. Oftentimes it's less for the big like chains like Subway, and more for like a startup company that's trying to get on the map, a company that you might have not heard of that's trying to be heard of, tends to look at more unconventional type of things. So we tend to be used more by the underdog than by the established player, if you see what I'm saying.
Oh, so Subway's not as big enough of an underdog. I got an underdog for you. Have you ever heard of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes?
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
See, everybody's heard of it. Very few people have watched it, except I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. I joke, every night, let's watch Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Let's say. So I'm bringing this up because we're in the process of doing a remake of the movie. It's an old cult classic, right? My
Okay.
father was one of the producers, and he and his friends are like, well, before we die, we got to make one more Killer Tomatoes, right? And I was
Okay.
just you're coming up talking about this, the end of the movie is a big stomp scene of everybody stomping on tomatoes and stuff. And so my question for you is, I'm coming to you saying, hey, how do we organize publicity to get awareness of the new Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, an old B-movie satire from 30 years ago? Like, could we hire somebody like you to
Yeah.
to do some big thing that would get media attention?
Yeah, and you know what? One thing that I think often is the most effective strategy for getting publicity is forming a group
Tomatoes.
against it. Well, sure, you could do a conventional thing, but you could
Uh-huh.
also figure out some controversy with the film, because people always like to watch what they're told they're not allowed to watch. Now, I don't
Uh-huh.
know much about this film, and I don't know who would be against this film. It doesn't sound
Yeah.
too controversial, but what if we could manufacture a controversy around the film such that now there's groups that are coming out and saying you must ban this film, because it's unchristian, or it's unseemly, it's wrong, it encourages bad dietary practices, whatever the case may be. um because if especially in this era, what I've found is, uh, and it's not exclusively in this era, but even increasingly, what works the best is if you can say, these people want me to fail, so you should help me. You know what I mean? Because the people that you don't like are trying to take me down. So therefore, I must be saying something of value. Do you see
Uh,
what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I mean, our producer Lena's looking over at here like you're running out of time here, Chad, but she is also laughing, which is good. So hopefully other people are laughing as well. Hey, if you have a chance, go watch. It's on Prime Video still, the original Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. There's a cartoon series in the 90s that got kicked off by Power Rangers in the mid 90s because, apparently kids liked most kids like Power Rangers. Yeah, so thanks a lot for kicking Killer Tomatoes off the air. Take a look at it. Reach back out to us if you have an idea, because literally, like, we're doing a pre-screening at I keep saying I didn't give anybody a transition, right? Independent Voter Project is one client of mine that I love. Another client of mine is remaking this Attack of the Killer Tomatoes movie my father was a part of years ago. But we have a partnership with the Midway in San Diego where we're going to do a pre-screening special to San Diego on January 28th. And, it's kind of ripe to, have a plan to do some publicity for the movie. Maybe Adam's got some ideas for it.
I have some ideas. They involve some Rotten Tomatoes, perhaps. If you've heard of the site Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's some connection we could do with Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm not going to disclose everything that I have planned on air.
Yeah, because I got to pay for that, right?
Yeah, I think you'd have to pay for it, but it would also, I want it to be a surprise for the audience. So,
typically.
yeah, you will have to stay tuned, I guess, on that, because I actually want to rewind to a really good question that you mentioned in regards to the idea of a protest being the sacrifice, because people have made this point before, and I think it's a really interesting point of the fact that people are taking off time from their work and making sacrifices. However, I guess I would say that in one level that's a classist argument, because before 1911, the members of the British Parliament were uncompensated, right? So who do you think became a member of the British Parliament? the landed gentry who were there either for ego or perhaps to kind of continue their legacy of kind of control and empire, right? So the point is, ordinary people could not afford to be members of British Parliament because it was an uncompensated position. So the reality of protest is the same thing, right? So yes, anybody is allowed to attend a protest, but the reason why most protests are disproportionately retirees or college students are those are the groups that have the lowest opportunity cost for attending a protest. If you're a well-to-do retiree or a college student, you can go to a protest at very little cost. If you are a person who works an hourly, close to minimum wage job and has a family to support, your cost for a protest is childcare you can't afford and taking unpaid time off, right? So the costs to attend a protest and the sacrifice involved is not the same. And one thing that Crowds on Demand does by compensating protesters is to actually give ordinary people the ability to speak out for their views.
So it's an equity argument. You're just making it more equitable and making it okay. So I get it. Hey, look, we invite you anytime. Author an article and post it on ivn.us. One of our etiquette guidelines is not self-promotion, but that doesn't mean you can't make debate that happens to cover an area of your profession, right? As long as it's in the interest of advancing this discussion we've had about, the legitimacy of paid protests. We'd love to publish it on IVN and have you back sometime. I've really enjoyed this discussion. Had a lot of fun. And, if you do have a bright idea on Killer Tomato, shoot me an email and we can talk about it some more. But this has been great. I appreciate your time, Adam.
I'll see what comes off the vine.
All right. Well, we'll end it there. Have a good one.
Brad.
Oh, man, we covered a lot of ground today. And Cara and I talked about, because we had multiple things going viral on IVN, thanks to Ethan. And Lena, you too. But, we had the Trump on cannabis issue, Kevin Kiley's gerrymandering legislation out in D.C., we talked about the types of primaries, and then we had a special guest that we were almost like didn't book, and then we were like, let's talk to him and see what it is. Adam Swart, who has a company that basically pays protesters to come out. Ended up being a fascinating conversation, right? It's like I asked him hard questions. I got to give it to him. He was prepared for them, gave good answers, extended answers, and then come to find out at the very end of the conversation, he loves election reform and the reforms that Independent Voter Project's working on, totally coincidentally. So probably going to have to invite Adam back. But I think it was a good episode this week. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Yeah. And for those of you listening, don't forget, go to ivn.us to see the latest, especially if you want to know what's going on in the election reform world. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Of course, if you can, please contribute. You can contribute at IVN or independentvoterproject.org. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.